Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club, and I'm back.
You know, we're always glad to see you, but can I just say today we are especially glad to see you. You had an incident that was not expected, certainly.
You know, Terry, I had a stroke, and I wasn't even aware of it, and I was unconscious, and all of a sudden, you know, I have a pacemaker. I had so-called atrial fibrillation. I'm kind of like an old car. They just keep putting parts in.
I like to think of it as the bionic man myself.
But I've got this pacemaker, and the doctor said, hey, you don't need any blood thinner. You're cool. And so I said, all right, fine. So I'm not taking a blood thinner. And all of a sudden, this thing popped through.
Did you have any warning ahead of time?
None whatsoever.
No sign whatsoever.
I was out with Scott Ross and his wife for dinner the night before. He said,
well, there you go.
He said it was like the Last Supper. I mean, come on.
Only Scott.
Yeah, and so I said, did you have lamb? And no.
So do you have, as you experienced these symptoms, it was really others who saw it in you?
Oh, yeah, well, we had a lady over at the house who cleans house, and she noticed something was wrong.
Really?
And she notified Gordon, I think, and Gordon, of course, Colt Christie's our head of security. He said, don't put him in an ambulance, don't send him, because they have to go to the nearest hospital.
Now, I didn't know that until...
He said, take him immediately down to Centera General, Norfolk General. And when they were down there, they were all ready to go, and they injected a port along my shoulder with a clot killer. And I was unconscious. I wasn't even aware of it.
And how long, once you had that injection, until you came?
About a minute. 2 minutes.
A minute or two,
And I came back, and the doctor looked, he said, it's a miracle. He said, I'm unconscious. He said, raise your hand. I raised my hand. He said, raise it up higher, raise it up. And
unbelievable.
It's a miracle.
I mean, this happened to you on a Friday.
Yeah.
And you were home on Sunday.
I
got your schedule. He was home on Sunday. I got that part down. Yeah.
Whatever,
I mean, to be released like that after experiencing something like that. I mean, you were unconscious, and you know, a lot of people wouldn't have come back from that.
Well,
that drug is quite the...
Well, it was amazing.
It's called TPA, right?
Right.
Yeah, and we're going to... I want to share a story that we did on this, because it's important to understand the signs that your housekeeper saw, and to know, you know, even things like I didn't know that we had a stroke center at a particular hospital here. I didn't realize that there was, I don't know if this is across the country, but if you have an ambulance come, it takes you to the nearest hospital. They have to do that. You would have lost time, and I think there's a time frame in there that...
For every minute that you have a stroke, without being treated, you lose 2 million cells in your brain.
Wow.
For every minute.
Wow.
And so mine was just starting, and it got there immediately, but for every minute. So if it's a half an hour, think of that.
Yes.
You lose, it was like 120 million cells in your brain. I mean, it's for an hour, it's terrible.
Well, we need to know how to spot someone who is experiencing a stroke, and about this clot-busting drug called TPA. Lori Johnson tells us why it's so important to use it as soon as possible after a stroke.
Most strokes are caused by clots that block blood flow to the brain. When that happens, brain cells die, some 2 million each minute. To limit the damage, the drug TPA can quickly dissolve the clot to get blood flowing again. Dr. Bruce Lowe, Director of Emergency Medicine at Centera Norfolk General Hospital, calls TPA a game changer.
I've seen patients who have had significant neurological symptoms who have completely resolved with this drug.
With less damage comes faster recovery. Most TPA patients can go home, not to a rehabilitation facility. While TPA can restore people to normal, as many as 90% of stroke victims are unable to receive it because they arrive at the hospital too late. TPA must be given within 4 hours of the onset of stroke symptoms, and many people don't recognize the signs soon enough. They happen suddenly and often include numbness or weakness of the face, arm, leg, or especially on one side of the body. Confusion, also not speaking or understanding well. Trouble seeing. Difficulty walking, dizziness, or losing balance.
And you may not recognize that you're having a stroke. A lot of times people maybe are in denial because you're not having pain, or it doesn't feel urgent like a heart attack does. So a lot of times people wait and delay, and our ability to treat with interventions like TPA don't become an option anymore, unfortunately.
Patients should call 911 immediately upon experiencing any of these symptoms because emergency crews can start treatment on the way to the hospital.
Definitely, the sooner that we give the TPA, the better. So we know that if we give them the first 60 minutes of symptom onset, that people have the best outcomes.
Learning stroke symptoms and taking quick action should they appear matter greatly because beating a stroke often comes down to beating the clock. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
An amazing drug and wonderful sound information on some things that we should all be aware of.
She said, I said it wrong. It's not an hour, it's every minute.
Every minute.
You lose 2 million cells.
Yeah.
2 million, every minute.
And many people are not with anyone else when this happens and pass out, and then...
Well, for example, when my wife, she also had a stroke. Mm-hmm. So we brought our EMT from CBN, who put her in an ambulance, and of course they did what they're supposed to do. They called her and took her to the local hospital, the closest hospital, where they did a CAT scan, and they said, look, she's got a blood clot. Well, big deal. So then we hauled her down to Sentara Norfolk General, and by then it was 1:30 in the morning, so she had her incident about 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
So you're looking at 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. And of course, she had a debilitating stroke, which she's still recovering from a year later.
Yeah. Well, that window is a small window. The reason we need to all know these signs and watch for them. We're so glad you're back.
I'm back on television for everybody. Well, in other news, Israel is considering its options after its confrontation this weekend with Iran. John Jessup has that.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back. Israel's Security Cabinet is exploring next move possibilities after the most significant conflict with Syria and Iran in years. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, the incident represented a dramatic escalation and sparked talks of war in the Middle East.
The incident began when Iran sent an unmanned aerial vehicle, or UAV, into Israeli airspace that an Israeli spokesman called a severe violation of Israeli sovereignty. Israel destroyed the drone and then countered with an airstrike on the command center that launched the UAV. During Israel's attack, Syria launched at least 20 anti-aircraft missiles and downed an F-16. It marked the first time in more than 30 years an Israeli plane was shot down by enemy fire. The pilot suffered serious wounds and was airlifted to a hospital. Israel then launched a second large-scale attack. It struck 12 targets inside Syria, including 4 Iranian installations. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized his warnings about Iran.
Iran seeks to use Syrian territory to attack Israel for its professed goal of destroying Israel. Our warnings were 100% correct. Israel holds Iran and its Syrian host responsible for today's aggression. We will continue to do whatever is necessary to protect our sovereignty and our security.
After the incident, the U.S. State Department said Iran's ambition to project its power and dominance places all of the people in the region at risk. And the U.S. Defense Department said Israel is our closest security partner in the region, and we fully support Israel's inherent right to defend itself. In Tehran, Iran downplayed its involvement, while hundreds of thousands of Iranians celebrated the 39th anniversary of the Iranian Revolution. They shouted death to Israel and death to America and displayed a number of ballistic missiles. One Israeli expert said Iran is determined to build Syria into an Iranian military base, while Israel is determined to stop it. Former IDF intelligence officer Marco Moreno told CBN News Iran is advancing its goal to dominate the region and threaten Israel.
Lebanon is they own Lebanon. Iraq, it's on its way. Syria, not yet, but it will happen. It's a strategic decision that the Iranians took to open a front with us in the Golan Heights. I think 2018 will be very important for us to deal with this problem.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Well, here in Washington, now that Congress has finished its budget deal to keep the government running for the next 2 years, the president is submitting his own budget today. It includes funding for his border wall and a program to repair America's roads and bridges. At the same time, the Senate is taking up the difficult issue of immigration. Amber Strong brings us that story.
With a budget deal under wraps, it's on to the next one for Congress and President Trump. On the list, immigration. The president says he needs 3 things to make it work:
fully securing the border, ending chain migration, and canceling the visa lottery.
In exchange, the administration's proposal offers a pathway to citizenship for 1.8 million of the so-called Dreamers, the illegal immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. But Trump says if his conditions aren't met, no deals. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is keeping his end of the bargain.
I want to thank the Democratic leader.
And in a rare move, will begin an open-ended debate over immigration today.
I do think that we can get something done this week.
Senator Jeff Flake is one of a handful of lawmakers working on an immigration proposal. He's hopeful a Senate plan could come as early as this week and be good enough for the conservative House and the president.
By definition, if we can get something with support of 65 to 70 senators or maybe more, it's going to be a good, broad bill.
On the other side of Washington, the president will unveil his plan to tackle infrastructure.
As we rebuild our industries, it is also time to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure.
Trump promised to fix America's roads and highways, but at a price tag of $1.5 trillion. The plan calls for $200 billion in federal money over the next decade. According to an administration official, that funding will come from cuts to other programs. That leaves more than $1 trillion for the states and private sectors to cover on their own. And that is a major sticking point for Democrats who want to see more from the federal government. Meanwhile, the president is meeting with state and local officials today at the White House, hoping to gain support for his new plan. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Amber. Well, the White House is making clear Chief of Staff John Kelly's job is safe. Critics have suggested Kelly might be fired or resign after 2 White House aides resigned over allegations of domestic abuse. Kelly had been aware of the allegations against White House Staff Secretary Rob Porter long before they became public. The White House has been fending tough media criticism since Porter resigned last week, but presidential counselor Kellyanne Conway says President Trump supports Kelly.
The president last night about this very issue, and he wanted me to reemphasize to everyone, including this morning, that he has full confidence in his current Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, and that he is not actively searching for replacements.
The White House denies that Kelly offered his resignation. Investors are looking for the rebound to continue on Wall Street today after the Dow Industrials turned around Friday and finished up 330 points. Many analysts have emphasized the recent sell-off was just a short-term correction.
Do not jeopardize your long-term financial security based on short-term volatility. Look at the big picture. The fact is the economy's growing, and if you're investing for years or decades, this is a good buying opportunity.
Some top experts also believe the bull market is not over and that stocks will hit new record highs in the months ahead. Pat, back to you.
Well, that's what our prognosticator, I was talking to our chief prognosticator, and he says he thinks the market's going up some more. You know, they said it could go one day as high as 1 million.
Really?
On the Dow. Yeah, well, it'll be years, but, you know, long term. The American economy is just extremely strong, and if we don't screw it up, it'll continue to grow. And, you know, that multiplication takes place. The compounding effect of money is just remarkable, and it gets very big very fast. So, hang in. I would advise people not to be playing the market for dips and spikes and all that stuff. You can't time it. There's just no way. So I think get into solid companies, and I like the ones that throw some dividends. If they have dividends, then it means your money is earning something every year, every week, every month, or whatever, and it's good.
So sit tight.
Sit tight. Yeah, I think so. Okay.